Usually when you work with coding agents like Claude Code or Cursor or Codex, you have some prompt, you tag some files, you say implement this and this. You probably use plan mode if it's kind of a big feature. If it's a small one, you can go without plan mode. But still it works for about 5 minutes, and you receive maybe a couple of new code files, which I think itself very useful. But maybe you've seen in the news how Cursor ran agents for a week autonomously building a browser from scratch, or how Anthropic used Claude Code to implement co-work from scratch, and companies are saying about how they run agents autonomously for days and even weeks. So in this video, I want to show you some example of how I was able to run Claude Code for many hours and how in one go it implemented me more than 50,000 lines of code. So if you are interested, please continue watching. So this is the commit I'm talking about. We can see 56,000 lines of code. We can see some API roads implemented. We can see some pages, so like JavaScript pages implemented. We can see a lot of components and some other TypeScript files. So let me now explain how it all worked and what you need to do is to make Claude Code implement such a big change to your code base. So in order to do that, what we need to know is how subagents work in Claude Code. So subagent is kind of a process where Claude Code can call this subagent, and this subagent itself is a Claude Code. So it's kind of a Claude Code calls Claude Code inside one session. The cool thing about subagents is that their context is isolated. So they work in a way that main Claude Code, it gives a task to subagent, hey, do this and that. It literally generates a prompt for this subagent. Then subagent goes, does its work, and returns back with the result. So it can modify files itself, it can do some research, and it comes back with some result. And the main process of Claude Code, it only looks at the task and result. And so because we can isolate different tasks in subagent, we can make Claude Code to implement a lot of things in one go for us. If you open Claude Code CLI, you can type agents and you will see all the available agents, and you can create a new agent. So we will not create new agents right now because for our purpose, it's enough to use built-in agents. So what we have built in. So here I think interesting is explore agent. It means that there can be a task to explore your code base in order to find out something, how your architecture works, where are some files, and Claude likes to call this explore agent automatically. And we're also interested in general purpose agent. General purpose agent is literally calling Claude Code with the same prompt with some specific task. So let's see how it works with these two subagents now. So I'm going to click escape. What I can do is I can type explore the code base using multiple explore subagents. And now let's see what Claude Code is going to do. You see that it is running this explore agent, and now it is running 2 agents, 3 agents. All of them has its own task. So we can press Ctrl O and we can see how it calls these agents. So explore with this prompt, explore with this prompt, with this prompt. So you see it is running 4 agents. They all work in their own context. They all do their own tool calls, reading files, analyzing something. They all work in parallel, which is great because we don't need to wait until they work sequentially. And after they finish, they will provide their results. So you see they are exploring different parts of the project. So app routers, project structure, components UI pattern, data, lib, utilities. And so based on that, they will provide reports to the main agent, and it will generate us a general overview. Now we see 3 agents are finished. Let's wait for the 4th one. Now you see that the agent is ready and it came up with some code base overview based on results. Again, we can press Ctrl O and see output of every agent. So if we scroll up, we can see that, for example, for this agent, this was the prompt and all the logs for this agent. And this is the response for this agent. And now when the main agent had all 4 responses, it looked at all of them and generated one single response based on our prompts. Now, how do we make Claude to generate code using subagents, and how we can make it generate a lot of code? So let me show you my prompts and what I did. I have this website called Bitekit, which is a website for my iOS app for colors tracking, and I have free tools here. So free tools is kind of a thing that I use for marketing because they are indexed in Google, and they like calculators or some AI analyzers, and we have a lot of them here. So for example, carnivore, total daily expenditure calculator, a person can enter their weight, age, some like goals, activity level, percentage fat, and it will calculate total daily expenditure, how many calories do they spend. And so people are Googling carnivore TDEE calculator, and our website appears somewhere in Google, and they might click, and then they might start using the app. So my goal was to generate a lot of such calculators and free tools. Some of them use AI, LLMs, some of them use some image APIs. You can see that every page is quite big one. So there is some text, some macros explained, how much protein, the best meats, tips for success, frequently asked questions, related tools. So you see it's quite not just a calculator, it's a full search engine optimized tool, which also has some meta tags. So it's kind of a complex task on its own. Now, before running the prompt to generate all the tools, I had this plan for 100 tools. So this plan contains all the tools. So it has tool name, type, description, and you see for every tool there is done, and in Markdown it's like a check mark whether this tool is implemented or not. What we also have, so this file, I asked Claude Code to do some research and come up with this file. What I also have here is create free tool skill. I have a separate video about skills, but basically this skill is a Markdown file which describes how the skill should be created. So you see tool name, so it basically has everything, how metadata should look like, how it should work, where it should put files for front end, how AI should work, everything, some examples. So it is 500 lines of description of how these free tools should work. You see, when I started the last process of implementing tools, it cooked for 4 hours, 38 minutes. So it was implementing tools one by one for more than 4 hours. And in one go, it implemented tools 61 to 100. So it's like 39 tools in one go. Here, you can see that it starts task. So task means it starts general purpose subagent with some specific task to implement a tool. And you see that it just runs a task, done, runs a task, done, runs a task, done. And it just does it incrementally until it finishes the task, until it implements all the tools I asked it to implement. Here is the prompt I used to implement them. So we have some unimplemented tools in this plan. I want you to implement them one by one, spinning up subagents. So you spin up subagent with task, then check its work, then mark as done, and continue with the next tool and next subagents. Then they can use create free tool skill to create skills. So I find that it's important to mention that they should use skill, otherwise they might not use it. For subagents, use task tool with general purpose agents. I had to add this line because when I used Opus model, which is the most powerful, it worked fine without it. But Sonnet didn't want to spin up subagents automatically. So I had to be very explicit about general purpose agent and about the task tool. Now, what about API usage and subscription for Claude? So I currently use Claude Max subscription, which cost me 90 British pounds. I think it costs around the same in dollars and euros. So it's like 5x max subscription. They also have 20x. I found that when I run Opus model, which is the most expensive one, it can't run for a long time, and usually in 2 hours of work, all my limit is done, so I have to wait for 3 more hours until the limit is reset. If I use Sonnet model, I think it's way better. And with Sonnet model, it was able to run for the whole 5-hour cycle and continue to the next cycle. So currently Anthropic resets your limits every 5 hours. And so I was able to make Sonnet 4.6 to run for a long time. And because I have all the instructions in my skill, I don't probably need the most expensive Opus model. Obviously, if I was using API tokens and pay per API, it would be very, very expensive for me. On the other hand, I automated a lot of work, and literally in one day of running Claude Code, probably the whole day, I had 100 tools. Each of them works as a cool separate functionality, which can be useful to some people. This was all I wanted to share with you today. If you have any other ideas of how you can run SUBAGENTS and how you can run Claude longer, please let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.